started here in just a minute. I just want to make sure you know you're in the right place. Money in Politics and Elections, Outlook for 2024. Welcoming you all to this afternoon session. Glad you're spending your Saturday with us talking about democracy. There's still 17 people unassigned that will be joining breakout rooms, so we'll get started in just a minute here.
My name, I think, is iPhone, and it should be Cassie Undlin.
Okay. Thank you, Cassie.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Okay. Let's get started. Welcome to this afternoon breakout session. Hope your day is going well so far. We're going to be covering money in politics and elections. And I want to introduce the team. I'm pleased today to be joined by Cindy Black, who's a league member and also executive director of Fix Democracy First. Many of you know her from the Wednesday Democracy Happy Hours. And if you haven't done those, I thoroughly encourage you to join them. It's a great opportunity to learn about democracy in the news. Cindy is also the partner for our Democracy Lobby Week, which is happening January 22nd through the 24th. Also on our team are our democracy advocates, Marilyn Byfield, Wendy Pierce, and Carol Sullivan. During the next hour, we'll share a brief outlook of legislation as we foresee it as of today for 2024 and opportunities for you to be involved. This is a high-level, fairly fast-paced introduction, so we are recording it. It will be available later next week on the website. Please use the chat to go ahead and ask any questions that you might have. And then we will have some opportunities for Q&A periods at the end of every section. So you can use your virtual hand raised if you want to be able to ask your question yourself. We have we have some guest speakers today to provide us detail on a couple of our priority bills. Nilu Jenks and Lisa Aro are here from Fair Vote, Washington, and later Mary Hall, who's the Thurston County Auditor, will be joining us. Now, the rest of the bills will be covering by our democracy team. So thank you, and on to Carol Sullivan.
Oh, thank you, Cindy. So first up, we are going to be learning about Washington, voting, options, implementation, compliance, Education Standards Act, and what it will do for Washington elections. It's an update of our local options bill, but we are going to be knowing this as the Washington Voices Act. So Lisa Aro, who is Executive Director of Fair Vote Washington, learned the value of ranked choice voting from a lesson designed for middle school math students when she was a math teacher. She's a Stanford University grad who with her husband spent 2 years living in Niger, Africa, under a military dictatorship. And that experience taught Lisa the importance of our democracy and keeping it on track. Lisa believes that ranked choice voting gives voters a more powerful voice in elections. We're also joined by Nilu Jenks, Faribault Washington's political director. She believes that ranked choice voting will help reduce harmful rhetoric in elections and help voters feel that their votes matter. Nilu has been advocating for climate change actions, and as a graduate of Wellesley College, she wants to see greater women's representation in government. She's a recent Seattle City Council candidate, a mother of two, and an avid reader. She and Lisa are going to explain what the Washington's Voices Act can do for voters in Washington. So we welcome you both. Let's learn about it.
Thank you, Cindy, Carol, and Cindy and all of the lobby team here, Democracy Lobby team. We sure appreciate the chance to come and speak with the league members today. We have a bill that we're very excited about, going to be introduced, going to be filed, we hope next week. Representative Mia Gregerson will be prime sponsoring in the House. And the Senate side is still, we haven't announced the Senate prime sponsor. We do expect a companion bill there. And as Carol mentioned, for those of you who've been following the ranked choice voting legislation in the last few years, the chief bill that we've been working hard to pass, we've called the ranked choice voting local options bill. It's getting a refresh and a rename this year, henceforth known as the Washington Voices Act. So all the policy that you knew and loved in that bill, that it's local and optional, allows local jurisdictions to adopt ranked choice voting, that's all still there. But there was a ruling this last year in the Washington State Supreme Court that has changed the landscape. Thanks, Cindy, for anticipating the change of slide there. June of 2023, in a case in Franklin County that did not center on ranked choice voting, but in issuing their opinion, the justices spelled out and clarified, confirmed that local jurisdictions in Washington State do now already have the authority to implement ranked choice voting by invoking the Washington Voting Rights Act. Pause just for a second to just pat ourselves on the back a little bit, those of us who are league members and helped to get this important legislation passed in 2018. Washington State is one of just a small handful of about a dozen states that has a state level Voting Rights Act, which, as we know, I think all of us on this call have been observing the gradual erosion of protections under the federal Voting Rights Act in the past few years. So important that we have this legislation here in Washington, which in many ways is even stronger in certain ways than the federal legislation. In one way, the Washington Voting Rights Act allows communities to take proactive action to get a better voting method in place if they have any concern that they may not be in compliance now or in the future with ensuring that members of protected communities can elect a candidate of their choosing. That is to say, racial, ethnic minorities and language minorities need to be have the ability to elect a candidate of their choosing. That's what the Washington Voting Rights Act ensures. So they spelled out this last June that localities in Washington can adopt ranked choice voting under the current framework of state laws. What does that mean? Next slide. Well, it means that in the absence of legislative guidance, local governments and courts are already considering ranked choice voting. We've seen several jurisdictions do that in the last few years: San Juan County, Clark County, Yakima County, and the city of Seattle. Not all of those have passed. Seattle's did, though. And what we see then, though, is that these local jurisdictions that are moving ahead, again, the Washington State Supreme Court just opened the door even wider for local jurisdictions to be able to do this. Each community, each jurisdiction is going to be independently developing their own rules around how ranked choice voting is implemented and how voters are educated. This is not a recipe for effective election administration. And I know that Mary Hall will be joining the call shortly. She, I think, and her fellow election administrators have legitimate concerns about an uneven terrain for ranked choice voting implementation around the state. Let's look at the next slide. So the Washington Voices Act, in addition to doing the things that you have been familiar with, those of you who've been following the local options bill in the past, that is to say, allowing local jurisdictions to adopt ranked choice voting in a very straightforward way. The Washington Voices Act will ensure that Washington Administrative Code will provide clear, consistent rules for how ranked choice voting is used across all the 39 counties in Washington state, including how voters are educated. And next slide. The intention of this act is to provide those baseline definitions and requirements so we see consistent implementation and standards across the state. Next slide. The bill does not attempt to specify all of the specifics of implementation or voter education. Instead, what it does is empower direct the Secretary of State to appoint work groups that are composed of community members and folks with experience at election administrators and so on to advise on, recommend the rules for implementation of elections as well as voter education. I think this is where I hand off to Nilu. Yes.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Lisa. Hi, everybody. Again, Nilu Jangs, Political Director with Fair Vote Washington. I'm really grateful to be here, and thank you for all your work as well. It helps bring us to this moment. And a quick shout out to Carol for her amazing unveiling of the Washington Voices Act name. I wanted to take a quick step back and say, what is this? What are these cats we're herding? What is the chaos about? And it's ranked choice voting, which is actually really easy to understand for most people once they get to try it. Experience that you can see a sample ballot here. You vote just like always for your favorite choice, and then if you want, you can choose to rank backups as well. So here you can see the first choice here was Hemlock, and then second Cedar, and third was Pine. And if your first choice doesn't make it through, your second choice gets allocated those votes. Next slide, please. And so why ranked choice voting? It's the fastest growing nonpartisan voting reform in the country, and it helps tamp down on negative campaigning, which we've seen a lot of actually in Seattle, where I live this year. It improves representation. It is shown for women. We have our first Indigenous representation in Alaska. And it also empowers voters. I was just speaking to somebody from Australia yesterday, where they've been using the system for over 100 years, and he really, really appreciated having those choices and hopes to see them here. And speaking to that point, voters who try ranked choice voting overwhelmingly like it. Next slide. So we're going to have a quick little video that does a better job summarizing and give you some ideas of why ranked choice voting has some real great benefits for voters in our society.
Politics is tearing us apart, and it's because elections aren't working for most of us. Here's why. In the US, each of us can vote for the candidate we like the most, but whenever more than 2 candidates are running to win one seat, it's possible for most voters to hate whoever wins. Because of this split vote, politicians can ignore the will of most voters and still win. Ranked choice voting gives you the freedom to select a backup choice to prevent that from happening. Let's say a group uses ranked choice voting to decide what to eat for dinner tonight. Each voter selects their favorite dish, but also has the option to choose backup dishes. If one food receives more than half the votes, it wins, just like in any other election. But let's get to dessert, where the competition is more fierce. What if no ice cream flavor has more than 50% of the vote? Under a normal race, vanilla would win, even though a majority of voters didn't pick it. With ranked choice voting, the flavor with the fewest votes is eliminated, and voters who chose that flavor as number 1 will have their votes count for their next choice. Everyone gets a say, no one wastes their vote, and the winner is the flavor that the largest number of people agreed upon. That's ranked choice voting. It's as easy as 1, 2, 3. You get more voice and more choice, and that makes elections better for all of us.
I don't know why. I really like that video and the song, the music. But yeah, we want to invite you all if you're interested. We are having a lobby day January 17th. Lisa kindly put a link in the chat. If you want to learn more about ranked choice voting or fair vote, you can learn more at the website, or we have time for questions now.
Yes, please feel free to raise your hands using the raise hand feature if you have any questions, or you can put them in chat and we'll ask them for you. We have about 5 minutes for Q&A. Karen.
Hi there. I love that video too. Thanks for showing that. I'm really curious about a strategic question, really. So if you're saying, I understand the need for integration at state level, but you're saying there's the opportunity exists in local elections. One of the interesting facts, of course, is that so many of our elections now have single candidates running unopposed. So as you think about that, I'm just wondering how you answer the strategic question of why would I need ranked choice voting when I only have 2 candidates or often just one? And I'm wondering, just talk a little bit about that.
I can maybe speak to that,
Yeah.
Lisa.
Yeah.
And Nico, I can't quite hear you. Your volume's really low.
Oh, I wish I'd my Zoom drops and adjusts its volume on the regular. Sorry, I wish I'd known that earlier. Thank you for telling me. I can speak to that. You know, I think a lot of people are hesitant to win in a winner take all race, and they don't see a lot of hope. As mentioned, I ran the Seattle City Council just this last race, and I actually had somebody drop out, our only immigrant, and say that he was going to endorse me because without ranked choice voting, he felt that he didn't have a chance. So I think it will actually bring candidates and leave candidates, as was my personal experience. He put it on his website and stated that explicitly. It wasn't something I'd invited. I wasn't working for Fair Vote yet. But I think it does actually give people hope that they have a chance in a system, and especially with money in politics, to give choices. So I think we do see, and Lisa, you can maybe speak to increased people signing up overall.
And that's a great perspective, Milo. Obviously, really valuable. You just were in a race and you know what that means. I do want to just bring forward one other point. We had a woman on a meeting this morning from our South Sound chapter group. She's from Gig Harbor, and she said, you know, in our local city council races this last fall, there were 4 candidates for 3 seats. And that meant because under current Washington state law, those candidates have to file each one for a separate single winner race. And so there were 2 candidates who were running unopposed. 2 people had filed for one of the seats, and so there was some, modest competition there. But effectively, where the city could have, but if ranked choice voting had been a possibility for them, had all 4 candidates listed on the same ballot, let voters rank them, and then pick the top 3, pick the best 3, and have it be a real competitive race. But as this woman was explaining, she said 2 of the candidates were running unopposed for seats. And she said they didn't even show up for debates. They made no effort to engage with the community because they obviously had no competition at all. So that's another reason structurally why ranked choice voting can really improve, even when you do have low numbers of candidates, make those races more competitive.
Good. Sarah Jane.
Yeah, I just want to add to that thought. On the other hand, Nilu's race had 10 candidates in the primary. And a couple of years ago for mayor, we had 15 candidates. And that amount of frustration is why many of us in Seattle threw in the towel and said, we have to do better.
Thank you for that comment, Sarah Jane. Yeah, large fields. That's where we need ranked choice voting.
You know, I'm going to drop a quick video in the chat. It's a campaign video for Oakland, and it's 3 women making a coalition kind of together and making a campaign ad and speaking to each other's strengths. So it's just generally a more inviting process as well for people who want to run, and they're saying this person choose for this reason or whatever. So I put it in there if you want to watch in your free time. I think it's actually pretty beautiful.
It's only about a minute long and we have time. Let's go ahead and show it now.
Love it. It's
Great.
great.
Can you show it to me? Thank you.
Hi, I'm Pam Harris.
I'm Nayeli Maxon.
I'm Shane Tao.
We're running for Oakland City Council District 4.
For the past 16 years, this seat has been held by dynamic women.
We are 3 well-qualified candidates for City Council.
We are mothers, public servants, and community leaders.
Pam has 20 years of nonprofit finance experience. She can manage any budget.
Nayeli has worked in the District 4 office. She knows the district's issues inside and out.
Shane has worked for the City Council for 5 years. She has the experience to get results.
We're asking for your support on November 6th.
This is a ranked choice election. Vote for us 1, 2, or 3.
You can learn more about us on our websites.
Vote for positive leadership,
Collaborative leadership.
Women's leadership.
Neela, that's just what it was like in your race, wasn't it? All the candidates. Yeah, no, it's the system, folks. It's not the people. Those same 3 folks, if they had been in a winner-take-all system without ranked choice voting, they would have been behaving differently.
Beautiful video. Lisa, we have another question, or Nilo, Karen, follow-up question. It seems that RCV would need to be combined with multi-member districts to allow that approach in local elections.
The approach I mentioned in Gig Harbor, absolutely yes. And the Washington Voices Act does give local jurisdictions that authority to do that. But even if Gig Harbor, for example, were to decide to stay with single winner races for their city council, they can still benefit from ranked choice voting's benefit of tamping down that negativity, as we saw in those Oakland races. There was going to be just one winner in that election. Those 3 women were all running for one position, but ranked choice voting changes, again, as Neela pointed out, the willingness of candidates to run. So it changes who runs, and it changes the flavor of the campaigning.
Lisa, I'll add also the Supreme Court case this summer did say that multi-member districts, proportional representation, which Portland has, by the way, or is going for, is also part of that decision this summer.
Excellent point. Thank you, Neela.
Yes, I'll make a point too that at the last convention, the league has decided to do an education project that I'm involved with, and Kit and Cindy Black and a couple of other members on multi-member districts, because that concept is a little just not as well known here in the United States. It's used a lot in other countries. So we're going to be going around to all the leagues across the state to introduce that concept, do a lot of Q&A, interactive mock elections, and just try to get that concept easier for people to understand. So that will be coming your way. Okay. All right, Cindy, you want to take on? We're going to jump into money and politics now.
Great. Thanks, Cindy. Again, my name is Cindy Black. I'm the Executive Director of Fixed Democracy First, and also a longtime member of the League of Women Voters. I'm currently a member of the Snohomish District, the Snohomish League, not the district. And so I'm going to talk about a couple of campaign finance bills. And I do want to mention that the League of Women Voters and Fixed Democracy First, for the longest time, were 2 of the only organizations in the state working on any campaign finance reform legislation and supporting that. We didn't have a lot of other groups doing that. Now we have a new coalition called People Powered Elections Washington, where the League, Fixed Democracy First, the Washington Bus, Washington for Equitable Representation, and other groups are a member of, to push forward more campaign finance legislation. So it's really nice to have a coalition now, and it's not just the League and Fixed Democracy First doing that work. We have a bigger group now. So 2 of the bills that we're supporting for campaign finance reform in this next legislative session, one is around expanding public funding of elections using a democracy voucher program. So a democracy voucher program, and we're looking similar to what the Seattle program is like. Some of you that live in Seattle may have used the program before. So how it works there is that each eligible resident, and that includes registered voters, but anybody that's a legal resident 18 or older. So that includes green card holders are eligible to use vouchers. The reason why is that because that group is also allowed to donate to elections in general. That's why they're allowed to use the voucher program. So each resident is eligible for 4 $25 vouchers that they can give to any participating candidate of their choice. And then that candidate is able to redeem those and use them for campaign expenses like hiring staff, mailers, yard signs, setting up a website, and a variety of other things. Anything you would use money for a campaign. They can't use it for personal use, but they can use it for campaign expenses. So we are interested in expanding a program similar to the Seattle program to statewide. We had legislation introduced this past session, House Bill 1755. Unfortunately, it did not get a hearing, but we just recently had a work session at the end of October in the House State Government and Tribal Relations Committee, where we had some people talking about how the voucher system works, some of the benefits. Erin McKean from the Campaign Legal Center, and then Wayne Barnett and Renee LeBeau from Seattle Ethics and Elections Commission were able to testify at that work session and talk about the program and how it works and why people want to institute a voucher type program. And what's interesting too is for the longest time, we weren't allowed to do public funding of elections. Back in the 1980s, King County and Seattle both had public funding of elections, but then there was something added to a ballot initiative that made it prohibited to use public funding of elections. Luckily, in 2008, the law reversed and it opened the door to allow local jurisdictions to adopt public funding. Our bill is going to have some improvements. We figured that out, that only local jurisdictions were able to do that. So the new bill language will enable state elections as well. So we would be interested in having public funding with the vouchers for legislative district races for senators and the House representatives. So we're very interested in moving that forward. We're hoping to get a hearing this session. We do have a long way to go. Rep. Daria Farivar is our sponsor in the House for this bill, and we're going to be adding some amendments to the language to improve it. And then we're also currently looking for a Senate sponsor as well. We have a couple people we've been talking to, and we're hoping to get something introduced in the Senate as well. But our big goal is to get a hearing in the House State Government and Tribal Relations Committee. The program would be overseen by the Public Disclosure Commission in Seattle. It's overseen by the Seattle Ethics and Elections Commission. And since we already have the PDC, which is a statewide organization or agency that oversees the keeping track of the money that gets into our elections, it makes sense for them to oversee the program. We've been in many discussions with the PDC, getting feedback from them as well as other groups. The big question, obviously, is how do we pay for this type of program? We're exploring a lot of different options. One of the most popular ones is to utilize fines to the PDC. Obviously, it would be excess money that they're not using in their general funds in their budget, but also maybe the implementation or addition of lobbying fees. For example, in particular, large business groups, corporations, and so forth that dump a lot of money into lobbying in the state, how we could attach some fees to some of that lobbying and use that money to fund a voucher program. So those are a couple of the options that we're thinking about and considering. There's still a long way to go on this. But we're very excited about moving public funding forward. And there's many benefits. Seattle program, just a little bit about how well that program has done. There's been many reports. If you go to the Seattle Ethics and Elections website, you'll see all the reports from the past elections. That program was voted in by Seattle voters back in 2015. It's paid for by a property tax levy. But the voters have to vote on that every 10 years. So one of the other things our People Powered Elections Coalition is working on is making sure that levy gets renewed in 2025. And so we're working with a lot of groups to try to renew that levy because it needs to be renewed every 10 years for that property tax. We considered that as a possible funding option for the state bill, but there was a lot of pushback on adding another tax that may be regressive in some way. So we're trying to find other alternatives to help pay for that program. So that's what's excuse me. That's what's happening with that bill, and we'll have more updates on that as we know. But the bill will carry over from the last session, but it will have some amendments, and we'll have updates on those amendments as it moves forward. But the big focus is trying to get a hearing for that bill.
Right. I wanted to interject and just respond to Carol's question about the PDC having staffing and funding. Definitely funding is an important component. One thing that we have going for us that is, like Cindy said, the Seattle Ethics and Election Commission has been doing this now for almost 10 years, and they have developed a great system, and a lot of their systems integrate with the PDC system. So when we initially went to talk to the PDC about this, they felt that that would make it a much easier lift because a lot of the work that's already been done, they could implement and use that as guidance for how they would set their system up. And the PDC, I also have to say, I follow a lot of their commission meetings, and they have an excellent information technology staff. They are really ahead of the game on a lot of things that they are offering to make it easy. So I have very good confidence that they'll be able to do it if we can find the funding and pass this bill.
And just to add on what Cindy just mentioned is we've helped facilitate meetings between the PDC and the Seattle Ethics and Elections because we wanted them to talk to each other. And as Cindy mentioned, the PDC was much more willing to invest time into this program because somebody's already done it. And that's something important to notice and to highlight is that this Seattle voucher program is the first of its kind, not just in the country, but in the world. There's other countries even looking at this type of program. Oakland recently passed this. Theirs won't be implemented for a couple of years because of funding issues. There's several other places looking to adopt a similar program. But Seattle's program is being looked at all over the country as a model program for public funding. And one of the benefits of doing a voucher program, it gives the power directly to the people that they have some say of what to do with those vouchers. And candidates that participate in the program have to reach out to voters and have that one-on-one conversations with them and ask them for their vouchers and have that interaction. Not all candidates take advantage of that, but the ones that are serious about using the program do that. And the majority of candidates do use that program. In fact, all of the candidates in this past election that won the primary for the general election participated in the program. So a lot of good information. I do also want to highlight one study that Win-Win Network did about a low propensity in first-time voters. Those folks that actually use their vouchers were more likely to vote in the elections. So it improved turnout. And the other benefits of we've seen with this is that people that had never participated or donated to election are now much more involved, in particular lower income, first-time voters, communities of color, younger voters. We're seeing a big uptick in participation because of the voucher program. So it's doing what it's intended to do, and that's why we want to replicate this on a statewide basis. And is there any other quick questions before I move on to the next bill?
Yes. How's it distributed to the voter? The
It's
coupon.
through the mail. They get sent them in the mail, but there's also an online portal. So for example, if you lost them or threw them in your recycling bin, you can go ahead and request those online. And also too, they don't get sent to legal residents, just registered voters. So legal residents do have to go online or request them, and you can request them a couple different ways. But the online portal is something that was implemented in the 2019. So the first cycle didn't have the online portal because Seattle has odd year elections. So it's, 2017 was the first year. In 2019, they had the portal. I was on the advisory council during that cycle, and that's when we implemented the online portal, but either through the mail or through the online portal. And Lynn. You're muted, Lynn. There you go.
I just wanted to ask, because over the years that I've watched elections, we have an awful lot of outside money coming in for everything, candidates and certain things. And some things I've watched just be destroyed by outside money so that people had no idea what was going on. And I don't know, but that needs to be curbed to the point that it's people here that are deciding elections. I personally made myself not give to outside of my state and my region, because I think that the people of those areas should be telling them who should be and how to do it. But like, I know not everyone feels that way, but there really needs to be some curbs on this. And that's what I wanted to say. Thanks.
Yeah, and this is the type of program, it's local constituents are the ones that get the money and contribute to local elections. So that's one big benefit of the program. And the other thing too, connected to what you just mentioned, Lynn, is that candidates that don't have deep pockets or ties to those special interests or those big money donors are able to run an effective election and win with a voucher type program, which they normally couldn't do if they didn't have access to that public funding.
And that's an excellent segue into the next bill that Cindy's going to talk about.
Yes. So this next bill is about ending foreign influence corporate money in Washington state elections. And this has to do with corporations that have significant foreign ownership that dump money in our elections on all levels, local, state, and federal. A big part of the problem happened when the court decision of Citizens United back in 2010 unleashed unlimited amounts of money in our elections. And shortly after that, the creation of super PACs and other ways that people can dump money in our elections. We still need to deal with Citizens United, but there are things we can do to curb some of that big money coming in. And one of the things is trying to address the corporate money that comes through corporations and big businesses that have a significant foreign ownership. So right now we have a new statewide bill that will be introduced this next session to ban that foreign influence corporations from donating in Washington elections. Last session, there was this bill, or this piece of legislation was added to a PDC request bill. It passed the Senate. It was an amendment added on the Senate floor. And what happened was it ended up passing partisan lines. And then when it got to the House, it didn't pass the House. And there was a lot of discussion with different legislators and PDC, and we thought it would be best for it to be its own standalone bill to get that type of attention. A similar bill has passed in Minnesota this year, and a statewide bill. It's the first state to do it. And then Seattle was the first jurisdiction for it to hold up. We passed this back in Seattle back in January of 2020. And so it would, what the bill does is ban corporations from donating to elections if they have a 1% single foreign owner or a 5% combined foreign ownership. Those numbers might seem kind of low, but when you look at these big Fortune 500 companies, a 1% ownership in a company like Amazon is huge. You're talking about multi-million dollars, and you're able to get the CEO on the phone and have some influence in a local, national, or statewide legislation. Same with if you have a combined foreign ownership, if you have different owners getting together and pushing feedback. And what we've seen since Citizens United is that corporations have taken advantage of that to influence local policy. So if you think about a company like Uber that has 40% foreign ownership, mostly from Saudi Arabia, could deeply impact the elections here in Washington state by if they didn't want a regulation around, Uber that affects them in some way. Amazon, huge company that's based here in Washington, has huge amount of foreign ownership from across the world and can have impact on laws here. So those are the companies we're really going after, these big corporations that have significant foreign ownership. This bill would not interfere with small businesses and locally owned businesses. We're talking about these bigger businesses that have significant foreign ownership. It would be overseen by the Public Disclosure Commission, again, PDC, which is already regulating and some of the money in election and keeping track of all of that. We've been working with the League of Women Voters, Free Speech for People, Washington Bus, and other organizations with the People Powered Elections Washington Coalition to support this legislation. It's going to be introduced in both the House and the Senate. The prime sponsor in the Senate would be Senator Wynn, and the prime sponsor in the House would be Representative Mena. Also in the past, Chair Ramos, who chairs the House State Government and Tribal Relations Committee, was very hesitant about this bill, but has since been a part of many conversations with us and other legislators and has guaranteed we're going to get a hearing for this bill in the House. And the House bill is going to be the one we're going to be pushing forward. We feel very confident it's not going to be a problem in the Senate. The House is a little stickier, so it makes sense for us to push it in the House. We are going to get a hearing, and Chair Ramos has almost guaranteed we're probably going to get it out of that committee and onto hopefully the floor for a vote. So we're very optimistic about moving this, and this is just one way we can control some of the big money that's being dumped in our elections through corporations that have this significant foreign ownership. So I'll stop there and see if there's any questions about this legislation. And by the way, we have not seen any legal challenges to this from the Seattle legislation, but Minnesota did immediately when they passed this past year, a challenge by the the Minnesota Chamber of Commerce. But what we've seen with past rulings is so far the courts have upheld, because federally we are not allowed to have any foreign money in our elections. So, and they have upheld previous rulings on this. So we're anticipating the ruling will respect that no foreign money should be coming, regardless if it's part of a corporation or not.
Okay. Looks like no questions. So we're waiting on Mary Hall. She did say she would be here between now and 2:30. So let's go ahead and move forward on the slide deck, and we'll talk about ACT via Zoom while we're waiting for Auditor Hall. And we'll have Wendy take that from here.
Thank you, Cindy. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Wendy Pierce from the Democracy Team, and we just want to make sure that everyone is aware of the upcoming ACT via Zoom information sessions. We all know that a strong democracy requires informed citizen participation, and these weekly sessions will invite you to learn more about the topics we are called to take action on in our legislative action letters. You'll be informed of the basics during the sessions, and then you can use the legislative action letter to let your legislators hear your voice. I'm going to be hosting these weekly ACT via Zoom sessions, and they will include the opportunity for question and answer. They're going to be held on Mondays from 10 to 11 a.m. starting January 8th and going through March 11th. They are open to league members and guests. We have league, state, and community presenters with background on legislative topics scheduled to speak. And it's very easy to register for ACT via Zoom. Just go to the website, the league website, lwvwa.org, then click on events, and then click on January 24 calendar page to register. Super easy. Once you've registered, you'll get a reminder each week about 1 hour before the session starts. If you happen to miss a session that you were particularly interested in, no worries, because each of the sessions will be recorded and you can catch them at your convenience later on the League YouTube channel. And just to give you a brief idea of the topics that'll be presented, on January 8th, we're going to start out having the issue chairs give updates on priority bills. And then some of the other topics will be like Washington Voices Act, even year elections, consumer environmental issues, learning how a bill becomes a law, and much more. We're going to pack a lot of info into these 1 hour sessions, and we really hope you'll sign up and join us. And one thing that came up in our previous breakout session that I want to add is if you have suggested topics that are somehow relevant, somehow in the realm of our current legislation, please send them to Cindy Madigan. Cindy, I believe your contact info is on the last slide here. Is that true? I think I saw it.
I'll put it in the chat too.
Okay, great. Thank you. So hope you'll join us. Thank you.
Thank you, Wendy. And I'm so pleased to welcome Mary Hall here. So Auditor Mary Hall has joined us, and I'm going to have Marilyn introduce her, and then we'll bring up her slides.
Thank you, Cindy. Elected Thurston County Auditor in 2013, Mary Hall began her elections career in Pierce County, later receiving her National Certification in Elections Administration. Ms. Hall has received multiple awards, in addition to the 2020 Auditor of the Year Award for her work during the COVID-19 pandemic, coordinating protection for her staff and voters that included drive-through voting. Since the presidential election of 2016, Ms. Hall's focus was to protect elections by improving the county's cybersecurity. Ms. Hall is currently serving as chair of the Washington State Association of County Auditors Legislative Committee. Please welcome Thurston County Auditor Mary Hall.
Thank you very much. It's a short session, as you know, so things move very quickly. So as an association, we're really just putting a few things forward, although I think we always come up with things we think about that are emergency legislation when we come into a presidential election, because there's so many things that you can never anticipate. Next slide. So our biggest priority bill is the threats to election officials. And this bill has been introduced several times. I believe the first time it was introduced was in 2021, following the last presidential election. And it's always passed the Senate 49-0, but we could never get it through the House. So last year we started it in the House, and then we couldn't get it out of committee in the Senate. So we've been assured this year that this is going to be on the fast track. It is going to start in House rules, and then go over to the Senate. And I'm pretty confident that the Senate will pass it fairly quickly. At least that's what they've promised us. So threats to election officials was included in the cyber harassment bill passed in 2022. So if somebody sends me an email, or, it's a Class C felony, but if somebody comes up to me with a gun and threatens me or knocks on my door at home or something like that, that's still a misdemeanor. So we really want to make everything level. So any threat to an election official, regardless of what form it's in, is a felony. And hopefully, if it's not, hopefully it won't happen, but if it does, I'm fingers crossed our prosecutors and sheriff's departments will take that seriously as well and prosecute. Next slide. The other bill we're working on, and this is something new for us, voter challenges and the ability to challenge a voter registration record has been around forever, and it's been used in some very good ways, challenging a candidate's residency, for example. Do they really live in the district? But what's happened, there's a group called the Election Integrity Group, and what they've been doing is going door to door and really misrepresenting themselves as being county employees. And they're challenging a lot of voters because they don't live at the address. Well, in Thurston County, as well as many others, we have a very heavy population of military and overseas voters. So a lot of these challenges have been for military and overseas voters. And we have canceled some voter registrations, but it's an administrative process that is very time consuming and out of date. So we want to bring it in line with our current environment. For example, I administer, it's an administrative hearing, and I have to oversee the hearing for every single case, which can be incredibly time consuming. So the bill allows us to delegate that to, say, our chief deputy or elections manager. It will also eliminate the need. Right now they're challenging inactive voters, which doesn't make sense because inactive voters don't receive a ballot anyway, and they're canceled as soon as they miss 2 federal elections. And it also gives us more time to post these challenges online. Right now it gives us 72 hours, and the challenges we got about 10 at a time, and they were 72 pages each. So that was a huge job for my staff. Plus we received them at about 4 o'clock on a Friday. So they spent their Friday evening scanning and posting all of these voter challenges to the web. So it's just a lot of administrative changes that will just make it more palatable. It doesn't eliminate voter challenges. I think they're a good thing, and they do have a place, but it's just going to make it so it's not so onerous on us, and kind of brings us up to date. We can contact them via email and other means than just mail. Next slide. And our next one is simplifying address changes. Currently, beginning just before the last presidential election, we went to a system called VoteWall, which is statewide voter registration database. So it's a great system. Every single county works in this system. It's real time. But the way the law is currently written, if a voter moves across county lines, say from Thurston to Pierce or Pierce to King, we have to inactivate that voter, send them a confirmation card, where we really should just be able to change the address, right? The voter really doesn't know that they're moving from one county to the other. So it will also allow them to do it easier, via email and phone call, and instead of having to submit a new voter registration, but they still have to give us their identifying information. So that will just make it much, much easier for voters, really. And, we change addresses because of national change of address or ERIC data or things like that. And we verify the signature. We take great care in managing our voter records. And there's a lot of communication between counties. So I think this is just going to simplify it. So at that time, at this point, these are the auditor's priority bills. That's not to say that a county is working with their own legislator to put something forward. That happens also when it's not a major bill, for example. So anyway, I would be happy to answer any questions.
All right, Carol has a question. How does the county know if someone has moved?
We get a lot of notices through the National Change of Address Service or a system called ERIC, which you may or may not heard of. It's basically a data matching tool. So we get records from them that would say this person now lives in Snohomish County. So what this will allow us to do is just transfer that voter to Snohomish County instead of sending them a confirmation card, which is forwardable. They send it back. They give us the address change. We cancel them. We send it up to Snohomish County or King County or whatever county it is. So there are multiple ways that also, if the voter can call us now and we can just transfer them across county lines where before we could not. They essentially had to re-register.
Great. Go ahead, Lynn.
I wanted to ask, we recently had some problems with our voting in our auditor's office because somebody sent envelopes with powder. And I'm just wondering if the laws could be more strict regarding stuff like that, because that kind of thing is really harmful to all of it. And, people are actually not voting because of, retribution of people, maybe even their neighbors. And we really need to have some kind of, integrity about this because it's really out of control. Thank you.
You're talking about the fentanyl that was found in the envelopes. Yeah, I got that also. And actually, so did California, Oregon, Nevada, and Georgia. So this wasn't an isolated incident. It just so happened that I was giving Department of Homeland Security a tour that day. So they camped out for 3 days. So, I don't know what we can do. They are toughening the laws, making things like that felonies, but they didn't come back in ballot envelopes. If it was in a ballot envelope, you would know the voter, right? They all came in number 10 envelopes addressed to the individual election office. So it just comes in your regular mail. So we are working with the Department of Homeland Security. There was just a advisory that came out, I believe it was either Thursday or Friday, talking about that. So it's on the radar of our federal officials, and there's a national conference in January that's joint elections and legislative conference, and I'm sure we'll be talking about that then. But yeah, it's I hope it doesn't stop people from voting. My concern is it's going to intimidate people from working in our offices, because election people don't get paid much.
It's true. Who else has a question? Feel free. Oh, there's Karen. Go ahead and unmute yourself.
All right, thank you. Could you please speak to what happens when a ballot is challenged due to the signature? In our county, we had quite a few ballots returned because of that.
So when we receive a ballot and it's flagged for a signature mismatch, we're required to send that voter a letter. And most counties do it on the same day. So we give them an opportunity to come in and update their signature. And what's interesting is there are two categories of challenge ballots. You got the people who just simply forget to sign the affidavit, and then you have the people whose signatures don't match for whatever reason. And the cure rate for people with signature discrepancies is much higher than the people who simply didn't sign their affidavit. So, we're always trying to message that. I use my voters pamphlet in Thurston County to encourage people to update their signature and don't ignore it if they get a letter from us. And any speaking engagement I have, I also speak to that, because signatures are how we ensure the validity of a vote. It's really a lot like a fingerprint. So, you know, any messaging the league could do also around that topic would be very, very helpful.
Well, who makes that decision that the signatures don't match?
Well, in my office, it goes through several people, but we have trained signature verification staff that take signature verification training every single year. It's through the Secretary of State's office. They bring in the State Patrol Fraud Division. You know, fraud experts teach that class. So it's election staff, but in my office, it goes all the way up to pretty high up the ranks before a ballot is rejected. They look at it several times, and we can hold multiple signatures. So we can go back in time and actually watch signatures change. And, you know, quite often it's somebody signing somebody else's ballot, or they had some medical issue where they're not signing the same, or really the age group that has the most mismatched signatures are the 25 to 34-year-olds, because they've now come into their own and they've developed their, you know, everyday signature. You'd think it would be the really young people or the really old people, but it's actually that 25 to 34-year-old group.
Interesting. Yeah. Well, thank you very much. Thank you for
Sure.
being here.
We have time
My
for
pleasure.
we have time for maybe one or two more questions. Cindy.
Yeah, I have a quick question about, because some of the headlines that we read is how much election officials and election workers are leaving and not participating anymore. What kind of quit rate, I don't know what else to call it, that we're seeing in Washington state around election workers? Are we seeing an uptick in people leaving those positions because of these threats that people are getting and the harassment?
You know, I don't really have any data on that. I don't know that we're tracking it. I know I haven't lost any of my full-time staff, but that's one of my biggest concerns, because I have, you know, I had a lot of retirements. I have some very young staff who don't make a lot of money, who could go make the same money doing something a lot less dangerous, if you will. And it's amazing. I'm amazed I'm even saying that. But I know I work really hard to reward and recognize and do everything I can to boost my staff. And I think other offices do as well. And our extra help, you know, they're just stubborn. I mean, you know, I had the Sheriff's Department, and then I had Department of Homeland Security on site the day that the news broke that we had this, and they came in, the sheriff came in and did training on how to use Norcan, because they brought in a bunch of Norcan. And, you know, at the end I said, you know, I know this is a lot, and if any of you want to leave, I would understand. You know, it won't affect your, you know, future employment at all. And not a single person left. So I almost cried. That was
That's great. Well, thank you so much, Auditor Hall. I really appreciate you coming in on a Saturday. I'm really grateful for your time and all the work that you do to keep our elections safe and secure and efficient. So appreciate that. Yes, thank
Thank our
you.
lawmakers. They've really done, especially Senator Sam Hunt has just been an incredible partner. So he really knows elections, and he's been a great partner, as well as, you know, everybody in the House. So yeah, we've got the best laws in the country as far as I'm concerned.
Okay, good to know. Yes, we will pass that thanks along when we have Lobby Week coming up. So good to hear. All right. Thank you, Mary.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Yes, yes. So now the last slide, Cindy, is our ask for volunteers. You know, this is a league is pretty much all volunteer organization. All the lobbyists are unpaid lobbyists. So we do a lot of work and really would appreciate anyone who has a little or a lot of time to spare. There's many opportunities to help with our research. And one of the things I put in the chat is the 2024 issue papers are now posted. So you can see what's going on for all of the league issues. What the legislation looks like it's going to come along. And I also want to really thank last year, Marilyn and Wendy joined our team as advocates, and they, along with Carol, are back again. I mean, we try to have a lot of fun when we're working and try to make sure people are doing work that's interesting and challenging, but not too overwhelming. So the more people that can engage with us, the better. And I really want to thank Cindy Black. She is always there to help us with tech support. And it's just amazing partnership that we have with Fixed Democracy, as well as a lot of other statewide and national coalitions. So when you come to do this work with us, you're not doing it alone. We have a lot of great support, and it makes it really interesting and rewarding. So thank you all. And I think our room is going to close in a couple seconds.
I do want to put in some links in the chat for some upcoming events real quick. So let me just briefly talk about those. Next Saturday on December 9th, if you're in the Yakima area, if know anybody in there, there's going to be a program on electoral justice in Yakima County from 1 to 3. And if you click on the event, it's a free event, free lunch. So if you're hungry and you have something to do and you're in Yakima, go visit. But check that out. That's just going to be talking about things like ranked choice voting and proportional representation. They'll talk about the Voices Act and a few other things. So check that out. And then I put the link for the Act via Zoom that Wendy talked about, if you want to sign up to get on the mailing list there. And then the league is hosting a Speak Up School on January 6th. I believe Cynthia mentioned that at the earlier in the day, but please check that out if you want to learn how to testify. Some of you may have a little bit more.
Oh, thank you. Wow.
I agree. Revenue
is good. Would the recording be available if we couldn't attend all the sessions we were interested in?
Is that Aruna? I couldn't understand what you said. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
the recording available?
Would the recording of the groups that we couldn't attend, would that be available?
Yeah, everybody's except my housing one because I couldn't find a way to do it. I don't know why. I could not figure it out. So yes, all of them will be, and the PowerPoints will all be. Mary Lynn?
Yeah, quick technical question. I forgot to stop the recording at the last session. Can I stop the recording now without messing everything up?
The breakouts have ended, so it should stop by itself.
Yeah, it'll stop by itself. I can confirm that because I had the same thing in my session.
So who put in the action workshop and Speak Up School?
That would be me.
Okay, I was going to do that, but thank you. So now I don't have to. Okay. So I suspect a lot of people are not going to come back just for this like 5 or 10 minute debrief or a wrap up, but thank you for being here. Our work takes a team. It takes every single one of us to make this happen. The things that we stand for, the things that we have positioned on, it takes all of us to make it happen. So by participating and getting kind of revved up for the session and then helping us by writing an email to your legislator or showing up for testimony or signing in pro or con or doing some research, every bit of that is part of what makes us work well. So thank you. Thank you. I just want to show a couple of things. One of them is that Cindy Black put the follow-up information about the Democracy Lobby Week and Speak Up School and ACT in the chat. I was going to go back to that PowerPoint, but she's got that in the chat. I just would like to share one other thing, which is, if I can find it again. We have a new web page for our issues, and this is very much like the one last year, except it says 2024. And so each one of the topics that we talked about today will show up on this page. And when
each one has an issue paper behind it. So Cindy Madigan has 2, elections and money in politics. Redistricting has 1, and so forth. So you can read those. And then when we get our legislative action newsletter started, updates to these will be posted. And each one of these titles, it's not ready yet. Each one of these titles will link to its own separate web page. So the issue chairs will be adding a ton of information on their web page, and then the weekly updates that we do every single time. So we're doing our best to keep you all informed, and that's really all I really wanted to say at the end of today. So does anybody have any other questions or feedback or any last words for the good of the order today? Just want to say thank you all again.
I want to say thank you to Cynthia for doing all this hard work and keeping everybody coordinated and moving. It's been a really good session. Yeah.
I didn't do it.
We appreciate
Much
it.
as
Yeah.
Cindy Black and other people. So
I know it was a team. It took
the
a team.
team did it. The team did it. So
Well, thanks to the team. We appreciate it.
Yes, very good.
Very
hey,
good.
Alexandra had her hand up and then went away. So
This is Lynn. I can't find my hand anymore. Can you hear me?
I was calling on Alexandra and I couldn't tell if she meant to have her hand up or not.
I'll let her go then. Talk to her.
Yeah, I heard my name called, so I lowered my hand. I just put into the chat a link to, a lot of people mentioned community education events with the League of Women Voters, Seattle King County. We used curriculum from the League of Women Voters in New Jersey. And we did 3 community civic education events in the fall, and we didn't have a lot of time to advertise for them, but we're going to do 3 more in the spring. So if you are members of the Seattle King County chapter, please look for those dates. They were really successful in the fall, and I really want to encourage you to spread the word about them when we do them again in the spring.
So I would welcome you to put that information also on the State League webpage as an event, so that others might participate if that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll let, I think Barb with the Seattle King County, I think she's the vice president. I'll let her know to do that.
Great. Okay, Aruna and then Rosemary.
No, I'm sorry, I forgot to take my hand down.
Okay, Rosemary.
So I just wanted to thank you, Cynthia, and all the team for today, and just to say for anyone who hasn't used the legislative alerts in the past, that they're amazingly wonderful and really, really easy to use to hear that our voices be heard. So use them and pass them around. They're really wonderful and a great resource. Thank you very much.
Thank you for saying that. Are there things that you think other people need to know? There's got to be more.
I agree with her 100%. Legislative updates are really helpful. And secondly, where can we access the recording?
We will send an email out to everybody telling you where all this information is. I haven't got a survey done. A couple of years ago, we did a survey too. We may also send you a survey, but you will definitely get an email. It's going to take us a few days to load this all up into one place. Thank you.
Thank you.
Aruna, are you back again? Do you have your hand up this time for real or not?
I don't think so. My hand is up. I lowered my hand already. I don't know what's. No.
Lynn.
Lower, yeah.
So I am just talking about this last fall. We've been trying to put together a criminal justice reform committee. And I'm finding that because of positions that we have as a league are keeping some people from doing anything regarding it because of their positions in one party or another. And I just wondered if, like, I finally decided that I would try to chair it and see if I could get people to come, and we didn't get anybody. So now I'm thinking, well, let's try a Zoom meeting, but I really don't know what's going on in the whole, because there are probably about 4 or 5 people that I think should be on the committee, but you know, more could be on. But does anybody else have issues with criminal justice in their area?
So let me just say a couple of things, and I don't want to, that could be a really long conversation. So first of all, the criminal justice position was updated substantially recently, and it is more progressive than it had been. And so when you're in a community that has mixed attitudes, you're going to not have the same uniformity of perspective. The league members who work on league issues have to do it under league positions. As individuals, they can do anything they want. So if you're forming a league committee, it has to be within the context of the league practices and policies. Okay, any other comments or feedback, or you want to tell somebody else something, or what?
Lynn, I'm interested. I'm in Spokane. I'm interested in Criminal Justice Committee in Spokane. I couldn't find your name to put my contact information in the participant list.
Yes, I've been informed of that, and I have that, but I haven't gotten any further since I've been with, I'm just now starting to think that we ought to do Zoom. So I'll get back to you. Thank you.
And there was one more person from Spokane in criminal justice group meeting today, and she was also interested.
Okay, so
Thank
we'll
you.
have the participants list and probably send that out as well. So any other topics that you want to cover today? Well, I think it's Saturday and it's almost 3 o'clock and people must be tired and you put in a long day. So I just want to say thank you once again. I'm just so grateful for you being here and for your help that I know is coming. So have a great rest of the weekend.
Thank you.
It was time well spent.
Thank you, Cindy. Thank you, Cynthia, everybody.